Now, let me be honest for a moment. Despite Robbie's belief that I am insane, I don't think I am. My name is Lydia and I am 27 years old. Robbie is 34 years old. After 2 years of marriage and 3 years of dating, I felt that we were a wonderful match. Sincerely, I believed that our relationship was strong, at least strong enough that things like my history would no longer be significant. I was apparently mistaken. Since you need to know why this whole situation has me so confused, I suppose I'll start with some background. There was a life before Robbie. I went out, I dated, and I enjoyed myself before meeting the one. You know, I didn't believe I was doing anything unusual or crazy for someone in their 20s. And sure, I've had boyfriends and I may have a somewhat larger figure than average, but now that we're married, I don't see how any of that should matter. That's the whole purpose of being married, isn't it? Since it no longer matters, you cease keeping score on such stuff. The problem is that Robbie initially didn't give a damn, or at least he didn't behave that way. He gave me the impression that it was simply a part of who I was. I believed him when he claimed that he admired my independence, self-assurance, and willingness to live my life. If I believed he was covertly evaluating me the entire time, we wouldn't have married, would we? So you can only imagine how shocked I was when this all began to blow up over a dumb joke at a family meal. I'll set the scenario for you. Robbie's brother Scott, who is his age, is seated across from me at the table with his wife, who is a calm, ideal housewife who never says anything out of turn, and who most likely has no concept of what it's like to have a genuine opinion. She's decent enough, but we're not the same in any case. Scott jokes that Robbie must have had extreme nerves to marry a lady with Lydia's resume. He referred to it as my resume, like if I were applying for a job or something. Robbie and everyone else laughed, and first I did too, because really, what else was I meant to do? However, the more I considered it, the more I felt like the target of the joke. Because I didn't want to cause a scene that evening, I ignored it. But I questioned Robbie about it after we got home. He should have apologized, or at least told me that Scott was being rude and that his actions had no real meaning. Rather, Robbie became strange and defensive, as if I were exaggerating. It's just a joke, Lyd. You know Scott doesn't mean anything by it, he remarked, and while anything, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that more was involved. I genuinely did try to move on. I don't usually think about things like this. But Robbie started acting strangely after that. It's like something changed after that night, and I'm not even sure how to describe it. He stopped striking up discussions with me the way he used to, and he was less loving. I would catch him. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. So it drove me when he looked at me as if he was trying to figure something out. I'm beginning to question whether Scott's foolish joke sowed a seed in his mind. Perhaps he hadn't everything. I feel nauseous at the thought that Robbie might be thinking about me again after all this time. I initially convinced myself that I was just being overly suspicious. Robbie isn't flawless either. After all, in addition to being older, he has had relationships lower than mine, but is it really important? I didn't believe it, and to be honest, neither did Robbie. I'm not so sure now, though. After that supper with Scott and his brief remark, I assumed that everything had mostly been resolved. Robbie had been acting strangely, to be sure, but I put it down to work-related stress or one of those sporadic moods individuals go through. Since life is too short to worry about things you cannot control, I wasn't going to overthink it. Besides, I assumed Robbie would mention anything if he had a problem. That's what married adults do, isn't it? That was my initial thought anyway. However, I once saw Robbie using his phone as I entered the living room one evening with his earbuds in. He was browsing YouTube while seated on the couch. That isn't strange. He always watches sporadic podcasts or videos, usually on finance, sports, or other topics. At first, I didn't give it much thought. I simply went about my business, getting a drink from the kitchen and browsing Instagram while half observing him. But suddenly I became aware of something when he was viewing something amusing. He was not laughing or responding as he usually does. He seemed to be thinking deeply about whatever he was listening to, as seen by the serious expression on his face. In an attempt to avoid coming across as intrusive, I asked him casually, "What are you watching?" expecting a halting response about investing advice or football statistics. He shrugged, looking up at me. "Just a podcast," he said in a somewhat bland voice. "About what?" I asked, my curiosity piqued by his peculiar voice. He answered, "Just relationships, I guess." before pulling out his earbuds and changing the topic. I didn't press the issue since, to be honest, I didn't think it mattered. Are you hungry? I was thinking of ordering something. Connections, what the heck? Perhaps he was watching a corny show about how to maintain the spark. Or a man discussing marriage advice. He might have been monitoring something about my past. But I didn't think of that at the moment. I didn't see his YouTube history until later that evening when I went to check something on his phone. My stomach plummeted a little when I saw the titles of the videos. Does body count matter in relationships? Men's honest thoughts on high body counts. Why your wife's past could affect your future. Those were just dumb videos, so it's not like I did this. It seemed strange, even though it was EOS by random guys with too much free time. I told myself I was overreacting and quickly closed the app as if I hadn't seen anything. However, I couldn't get rid of the impression that Robbie was still preoccupied with something, and I wasn't sure how to handle it. He said a few days later that he had received an invitation to go out for drinks from his friend Dan, this other guy Robbie works with, and his girlfriend. Dan and his wife and a few other members of their social circle seemed to be involved this time. Robbie said, I might stop by after work. It's nothing major, usually. When he told me about these things, I would assume that we would both go. Confused, I blinked at him. Robbie paused and scratched the back of his neck before answering, oh. Okay, so we're going. I wasn't sure if you'd want to. I mean, it's kind of last minute. I chuckled. I said, so casually, why wouldn't I want to? I love Dan and Emily. And I haven't seen them in forever. We're going. I didn't even realize how uncomfortable he looked, but that was that. He didn't argue at first. Everything seemed normal enough when we arrived. Emily and I were catching up on everything. From her career to her children to her holiday preparations. Dan, Robbie, and a few of the other guys were laughing over something at the bar. As is typically the case when we are out with this group, everything felt comfortable and comforting. I nearly forgot about the strange things that had happened over the preceding week. The atmosphere changed during supper, though. Dan casually remarked that you never truly know someone until you've spent some time with them. It was one of those general relationship remarks that most likely had no real significance, yeah? Especially when you learn about their past, like, oh, you didn't mention that little detail before we got married. His wife Emily added after he had kind of chuckled. I sensed a little shift in the atmosphere around the table. Even though it was only a harmless, foolish remark, Robbie was not laughing when I looked at him. His mouth was clenched as he stared at his drink. Perhaps attempting not to react, I made an effort to remain calm. I tried to lighten the situation by laughing a little and saying, guess that's why they say honesty is the best policy, right? However, the discussion had already progressed, and only I seemed to notice Robbie's strained appearance, I suppose. The rest of the night went well. We spoke about nothing significant, laughed and drank. However, Robbie's vibe seemed off, as if he were trapped in thoughts and not quite present. He was quieter than normal on the way home. I tried to break the stillness by asking, did you have fun? Gazing out of the window, he answered, yeah, it was fine. Fine was all he replied, and I couldn't get rid of the thought that perhaps he was referring to us rather than the night, even though Robbie wasn't talking much. I could sense the tension growing. He isn't the type of guy who, why do you lash out or make accusations? It seems that this was one of those occasions when he prefers to let things simmer until they eventually bubble over. It began with something innocent, at least that's what I believed it to be. I was browsing through my phone and half watching a TV while Robbie and I sat on the couch. He asked, why do you even still have social media? And I glanced at him, perplexed, so I suppose I wasn't listening to him very closely. You're not posting much. And you're not an influencer or anything, he replied in a neutral but inquisitive tone. What do you mean? I mean, what do you even need it for? I gave a shrug. He didn't seem persuaded. I don't know, to keep up with people, see what my friends are up to. It's not that deep, Robbie. I rolled my eyes because, to be honest, it seemed like he was making a huge deal out of nothing. Yeah, but it feels like something you were more into before we got married. Why are you still on it all the time? I asked. He cocked his head slightly and said, what's the problem, though? It's not like I'm doing anything shady, I snapped. I'm not defensive. Which, in retrospect, certainly made me sound more defensive. I didn't say you were, but why are you getting defensive? Robbie crossed his arms and sat back against the couch. It's just weird you're bringing this up now. I've always had social media. You didn't care before, so why does it matter now? He said. I don't know, maybe I'm just curious. You spend a lot of time on your phone, and it feels like you're more, I don't know, invested in it than you are in us sometimes. I chuckled, but it seemed forced. He remarked nonchalantly as if it were normal. That's ridiculous, you're acting like I'm out here living a double life or something. Then swap phones with me, he continued. I froze for a moment because the request felt intrusive. Not because I had anything to hide, at least not in my thinking. I said, why? In a harsher tone than I intended. Why not? He shot back. After hesitating, I gave him my phone and said, if it's not a big deal, then it shouldn't be a problem. He accepted it, and for a split second, I believed everything would be all right. Fine, go ahead. I've got nothing to hide. I didn't give it much thought as he began to go through my apps. But suddenly he stopped. I scowled and asked, why do you still have Snapchat? What do you mean? Everyone has Snapchat. Not really, he explained, glaring at me. I don't need it, I responded, rolling my eyes once more. I haven't used that app in years. Why do you need it? He didn't appear persuaded, but he continued, saying, it's just there. I barely even use it. Then he launched Instagram. Even though I hadn't done anything illegal, I wasn't sure how he would react when he saw my direct messages. So I felt my stomach clench a little. He went directly to my messages, as expected. He scrolled without saying anything at first. Who's this? I asked, looking at the screen as he paused and turned the phone toward me. It was some guy who DM'd me a while back saying something like, hey, you, gorgeous. I would love to get to know you better, I replied, but only with a thanks. And some light chit-chat, nothing serious. I don't even know him, I said quickly. It's just some random guy. Then why are you responding? Robbie asked, his tone sharper now. I was just being nice, I said, waving it off. It's not like I was flirting with him. He stared at me like I just said something crazy. You think this is okay? Some guy slides into your DMs, and instead of ignoring him, you're giving him attention? That's not being nice, Lydia. That's crossing a line. It's not crossing a line, I shot back, my voice rising. I didn't do anything wrong. It's not like I went out and met up with him or something. That's not the point, he said, his voice low and steady, which somehow made it worse. The point is, you're married. You shouldn't be entertaining random guys like this, even if it's just online. What do you think this looks like? To me, it looks like you're overreacting, I said, crossing my arms. It's just harmless DM. Everyone does it. Everyone, he repeated, his tone cold now. Do you think I'm out here chatting with random women? Because I'm not. You know why? Because I respect you, and I thought you respected me. That hit a nerve. I do respect you. This has nothing to do with respect. It's just social media. It's not that serious. Not that serious, he said, shaking his head. You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about some messages. It's about what it says about you, about us. You're acting like you're still single, like none of this even matters to you. That's not fair, I said, feeling my face heat up. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It's not like I cheated on you. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. You think this isn't cheating? Maybe not in the physical sense, but emotionally it sure feels like it. And the fact that you can't even see that. He trailed off, shaking his head again. I don't know what to do with this, Lydia. I wanted to argue, to explain that he was making a mountain out of a molehill, but the words wouldn't come. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't know how to make him see my side, and deep down, I was starting to wonder if maybe he didn't want to see it. Robbie stormed out of the room in silence, but I could feel the heat of his anger even after he was gone. I sat there, my chest tight and my mind racing, trying to figure out what had just happened. It wasn't like I was cheating on him, not physically, not emotionally, not in any way that actually mattered. Sure, I'd responded to a few DMs, but who doesn't? It's not a big deal, right? At least that's what I kept telling myself. Then I realized he'd taken my phone with him. Robbie, I called out, trying to keep my voice calm. But there was no answer. My stomach churned as I got up and went to the door. Hesitating before stepping into the hallway, I could hear him in the kitchen, pacing. My gut told me I should just stay put and let him cool off. But before I could decide what to do, I heard, said my voice cracking. I'm the same person I've always been, and that's the problem, he shouted. You haven't changed at all. You continue to act as though I don't matter, that you're single, and that none of this matters. Why in the world would I marry someone who was unable to move past her history? I had never really considered it that way before. I'd always assumed that as long as I wasn't outright cheating, everything was fine. However, Robbie shook his head and ran a hand through his hair, his anger giving way to something that looked more like exhaustion. The words hit me like a slap. I wanted to argue, to explain, to somehow convince him that he was wrong about me. But the truth was that I didn't have a good answer. You know what? I'm finished. I can no longer do this. I felt sick to my stomach. What do you say? His voice was cool and calm as he stated, I'm saying I want a divorce, adding, this marriage is a joke. Without trust, what's the point? I can't trust you. I said, you don't mean that. In a voice that was almost audible, he answered, I do. And we looked at each other, and you know what's the saddest part? I doubt you even give a damn. Not at all. You're unhappy because you were caught, not because you wounded me. I answered, that's not true, with tears in my eyes, Robbie. I do care. I cherish you, don't. He urged, gesturing for me to stop, because you wouldn't be doing this if you truly loved me. You wouldn't be standing here attempting to defend it, conversing with other males, or using Tinder. The expression in his eyes told me it was over. He was done, and perhaps I knew in my heart that he had every right to be. I wanted to argue, to fight for our marriage. We didn't argue or try to work things out. There was nothing left to say. Our divorce was finalized within a few months, and it was quick, clean, and devastating in its finality. Robbie didn't fight for the house or try to make things messy. He just wanted to move on, and I couldn't blame him. The next few days were a blur. Robbie stayed at a friend's place while I stayed at home trying to process what had happened. He returned a week later, but only to pack his belongings. It wasn't just Robbie reevaluating my past that destroyed our marriage. It was my refusal to let go of the person I used to be. Even at the expense of the person I claimed to love the most, I still occasionally think about him. The life we could have had if I had been different, if I had been honest with myself about what I really wanted, or if I had been willing to change. Robbie left the room without saying another word, but I could tell he was still upset because I stayed on the couch with my arms crossed, furious not at myself, but at him. I mean, he was upset about the direct messages, but the way he spoke to me, as if I were a teenager who had been caught snooping around, wasn't okay. It wasn't fair. I was his wife, not some criminal, and the least he could do was listen to me. A few more minutes went by, and then I thought about getting up to find him, but I hesitated. Perhaps it would be better to let him calm down, I told myself. But deep down I felt a gnawing sense of dread. Then I heard his voice from the hallway. And he wasn't exactly yelling, it was worse, he was laughing, this low, bitter laugh that made my skin crawl. A second later, he returned to the room, holding my phone up as if it were evidence in a court. His voice was filled with incredulity as he said, Tinder, Lydia, really? You believe that I wouldn't discover this if you simply hid it in a folder? He held the phone out to me, shaking it slightly for emphasis, and said, you know all I had to do was search Tinder on your apps, right? I froze, my lips opening. But nothing came out. As if you couldn't adequately conceal it. How foolish do you believe me to be? That word, stupid, cut through me like a knife. My face burned with a mix of embarrassment and anger, but I latched onto it, ignoring everything else he'd said. Did you just call me dumb? I yelled, my voice trembling, after giving me another stern chuckle. Robbie blinked at me and said, that's what you're focusing on? The fact that I called you stupid, not the dating app you have on your phone. Amazing. It's not even being used by me. It's just there. I shot back, raising my voice. I overlooked it. Oh, you overlooked it? Yes, because people simply forget they have Tinder installed. He replied in a contemptuous tone. That is completely logical. I'm serious, Robbie. I continued, sounding almost begging now. I haven't touched it in a very long time. Check out the app. It has nothing on it. No matches, no messages. It's there. He paced the room as if he was trying to stop himself from blowing up. Throwing my phone on the coffee table and stroking his hair. You really don't get it, do you? Whether or not you were active on it makes no difference. I can tell everything I need to know just by the fact that it's on your phone. That is unfair. With a quivering voice, I said, I'm not unfaithful to you. Never have I. Stop it, Lydia. You think I'm going to believe anything you say now? He yelled, turning to me. For God knows how long you have been lying to my face. I discovered that you had Tinder hidden away like some nefarious little secret. And you've been amusing other people in your direct messages. You want me to just, what? Have faith in you? I am being honest. I swear, Robbie, I wasn't doing anything, I exclaimed, my eyes beginning to water. Simply stop, just stop, he remarked in a chilly tone. I am no longer able to do this. You are spinning this into something it isn't, and I can't sit here and listen. You have no idea how embarrassing this is for me. I have been standing up for you and us. I thought you were superior to what people said, so I've disregarded the jokes, the remarks, everything. However, I realize now that I was the fool. I wanted to scream and defend myself to make him understand. But I knew that wouldn't help because he had already made up his mind, and worst of all, I couldn't really blame him, not completely. We just stood there staring at each other for a while, and the silence was oppressive. Then Robbie spoke again in a calm but icy tone and said, I'm done, Lydia. I am no longer able to do this. I have no idea who you are. What? What do you say? Even though I already knew the answer, I still asked. He added, I'm saying I want a divorce, mine. You can continue to try to defend this to yourself, but I'm not going to stay here and watch you ruin what's left of this marriage. It's finished. The divorce went quickly, but it wasn't clean. Robbie didn't want to fight over anything. He just wanted to get out. He let me keep the apartment, mainly because he didn't want to deal with the trouble of moving my belongings. He took only his clothes and a few personal items, leaving behind the TV, the furniture, and the dishes. It seemed as though he wanted to quickly remove any evidence of our time together. I kept telling myself that I would be all right, that I didn't need him, and that I would get over this, but the truth hit me harder than I had anticipated. Robbie had always been the one who kept things in perspective, and without him, everything felt out of control. My friends, or at least the ones I believed to be my friends, began to distance themselves from me. Some took sides with Robbie, while others simply didn't want to deal with the drama, leaving me with a small group of people who didn't really care. I was struggling financially, and Robbie had been taking care of most of the bills, and I didn't realize how much I depended on him until he was gone. I was drowning in credit card debt and behind on rent before I knew it, and the stress was unbearable, but I didn't know how to deal with it socially. It wasn't much better. Word quickly got out about Robbie and my breakup, and I was suddenly that girl, the one who couldn't keep her marriage together, the one who continued to act as though she was single even though she wasn't. It was embarrassing, and Robbie, he moved on, not immediately, but eventually. I heard from mutual friends that he began dating someone new, grounded, and most importantly, drama-free. I couldn't say I didn't deserve it, but seeing pictures of them together on social media felt like a kick in the gut. I tried to pick myself up and deleted my accounts for a while, partly to avoid the criticism and because I couldn't stand looking at them anymore. But it wasn't enough. Looking back, I wish I'd handled things differently, that I'd taken Robbie's concerns seriously instead, that I'd been honest with him and with myself of brushing them off. But it's too late for that now. All I can do is live with my decisions and hope I don't make the same mistakes again because, as much as I hate to admit it, Robbie was right. I wasn't ready for marriage, and by the time I realized that, it was too late to save us.